Hi, everybody. It's sunny in Cleveland today, which is so exciting. Michelle, where are you?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it is vaguely sunny here too.
Oh, good. Two happy people with a brand new day, a new start to a new administration. Yay.
Things feel good, yes.
Yep, optimism. Okay,
That's right.
um, today I'm here with Michelle Icard. So happy to be here with you. It's been a long time since we've spoken.
It has,
Michelle
thank
is
you.
a speaker, an author, an educator who helps kids, parents, and teachers navigate the complicated social worlds of early adolescence. Her latest book, which is coming out next week and so exciting and such a great book, it's coming out on not next week, next month,
That's right.
February 23rd.
We've lost all sense of time.
Yes, absolutely. And today is 21/21.
Oh,
Yeah, 1/21/21. So her book is coming out on February 23rd, 14 Talks by Age 14. So why don't we start by you telling us what took you, your first book, Middle School Makeover, great book. If you haven't read it, go get it. So in between that book and this book, what happened to prompt you to write this book?
I've been doing a lot of work with parents of middle schoolers. So I have a Facebook group. We've got a little over 7,000 parents there. So I'm interacting with parents every day. And a big theme that is recurring within this group is I need to talk to my kid about X and they won't listen. How do I make my kid understand? I can't get them to understand the value of this or why this is dangerous, that sort of stuff. And so I'm really interested in drilling down to the sort of finer points of communication with kids this age. And that is what I've been working on really for 15 years, but exclusively for the past few years.
Well, you accomplished your goal. Great book. And I love that someone described your book as the Rosetta Stone for talking to your tweens. I just love that because it does turn out to be a foreign language. And it's like we never get access to what that foreign language is. So your book really does that for us. Why is this a moment between parent and child where communication starts to be so challenging?
That's such a good question. You're right. It's a moment. There's almost a time when you realize, gosh, we used to talk in the same language. I understood what every cry meant. I knew just what you needed before you said it. And suddenly I can't say anything without you getting angry, and I don't understand what you're saying to me. So what I think happens is that it is the job of language to tie people together, and it is the job of tweens and teens to break connections apart. So they're really out there hustling to establish their own independence from the family unit. And that's a good thing. It can be uncomfortable and painful and upsetting as they go through the stages of making that happen, but it's what they're supposed to do. So they start to tear apart the thing that binds us. And that's a natural thing. But what it means is that we have to learn how to communicate with them again and establish a new language between us.
So it's not catching up to their language. It's really actually a brand new language.
It's a new way of talking together.
Yeah, they want to push us away, and we have to find a new way that doesn't stop them.
That's right.
Right? If it's developmentally appropriate for them to try and push away, we're not trying to bring them back into childhood.
I love that you said that. That's exactly right. We're hopping on the ride. We're catching up. And it means we have to tweak some things. And along the way, we're going to teach them how to tweak some things too, because as they're becoming adults and becoming independent, still our job to model a good way to do that, right? So everybody's got to get a little bit flexible. And the book is about teaching you how to talk to your kid in a way that allows them to do that with you.
So in the beginning of the book, you talk about the four walls that you create. And first of all, I'm a little like curious about the idea that creating boundaries creates freedom.
Right.
So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about with you. What does that actually mean? And then you say that you picked four, but everybody has to pick their own four. So I wanted to go down that process so we could understand how, what it means and how you picked your four.
Sure. So what I talk about in the book is I use a metaphor of a racquetball court. A lot of parents in my work express a lot of fear around having these kinds of conversations. I'll say like, it's time to talk about porn. It's time to talk about vaping. It's time to talk about, independence. and sex and all of this stuff that you have to talk with your kids about, but that causes parents to freak out. So if you think of playing racquetball and you're a beginner, it can be terrifying because the ball is going to just zoom past you or hit you and you're ducking and you're afraid. But the walls of the court are what allow you to play the game. So when you're thinking about talking with your kids, you want to think about sort of what are the parameters that I can create to allow this conversation to go any direction it needs to go without fear. And I use the idea of having 4 walls because it works well for the metaphor. You may decide in your family, we've got 6 walls in this room. That's fine too. The ones that worked for my family that we established when my kids were really young were these. So one is sleep. It's a very basic thing. And without it, we were grumpy and no one could communicate well. So if things sort of took a turn and I didn't like the way things were going, I could say, let's all get a good night's sleep and we'll talk about this again tomorrow. It's a great way to press the pause button. That was probably my highest value as a parent, me getting sleep and the kids getting sleep. The second is autonomy. And that was an understanding in our family that we are each individuals. We're part of this union and unit, but we get to think what we think and feel what we feel and be who we are unapologetically. The third is unconditional love. I was just gooey about this, that no matter what, no matter who you are and what you think and what you believe, I love you. And we all get that from each other. And then the last one is this idea of inherent worth, that each of us in our family and also extending outside of our family has value and deserves to be treated with dignity just because we exist. And that is, I will give a nod to Rosalind Wiseman, who does a lot of work in this area. And I really picked up on that idea from her and drew it into my own family.
So when I love all 4 of yours, I'm curious, like, how would I pick? I mean, all I can think of are those 4. The only one, right? So I automatically thought, well, what else is there? But then I thought about safety. You don't have safety in your 4 walls. I'm sure you thought about it.
Safety is really important, but I think safety grows out of some of these things. So you could have safety be one of yours. I think some people would say faith. Where's faith? Or you could have, lots of things on here. And so there's room for more walls, but if you make it too complicated, I think the model can start to break down because then you're always trying to remember, shoot, and I have to have this and I have to have that. Safety for me came into play in thinking about things like autonomy. So you're an independent person. You want to go out and explore the world. You can do that when I know that you know how to cross the street without getting hit by a car, right? Or when I know that you're well rested, you've gotten your sleep and you can make smart decisions out there. So along the way, I felt like that came into play, but it was too much to juggle.
No, but it's great because it's not just one word. It represents a bunch of other behaviors that you already have thought about that are integrated. So now I want to know this unconditional love. Are you able to like hug and kiss your kids when you're really mad at them?
There are times when I am so mad at them and I cannot. Those are few and far between. I said to my kids early, we got into a fight when one of my kids was middle school age. And I was mad at him and I said, I love you at the end of the fight. And he did not. And he stormed off. And I remember very clearly saying, you can be mad at me. You can tell me you're angry at me, but you don't get to withhold love just because you're mad. That was a little part of that rule, the unconditional love rule. And we are one of those weird families that I see being made fun of a lot on sitcoms where someone goes into the kitchen to get a drink and they're like, bye, love you, bye, love you. It's a little gross, but that's how I am. I'm really lovey.
And then I want to know why this creates freedom instead of lack of freedom.
Right. So the feeling that you have some structure there allows you to talk about stuff and experience things together without the fear that the wheels are going to fall off, right? You know, you've got these 4 things in place, however many you have in your family. And with those, you're allowed to push a little bit and explore a little bit and talk about things freely without fear. You can be brave enough to say, I'm really bothered by this. I don't like how this is going. We had a conversation like that over break at my family. And I think we can have those really tough conversations because we've established the safety of the family unit within those walls.
I think it's beautiful.
Thanks.
I mean, I don't know how easily I could implement it personally, but I would strive to. I'm going to get back to you on it.
And I will tell you, it's not about being perfect. It's not in my house like, oh, everything's so great because we have this little system and it never fails. We all cry, we have breakdowns, we get angry, all the normal range of emotion and human experiences. But it's nice to pull back and give some thought to what are the core values here.
Okay, so you did mention that you have access to a lot of moms, a lot of parents.
And dads, yes.
Right, a lot of parents. So what are the general themes of the crises we're dealing with right now?
Well, right now it's all pandemic related. I mean, so everything that I would normally see now has a pandemic twist on it. So if it was social media a year and a half ago, now it's social media during the pandemic when they need to be on their screens to socialize. How do we handle this? Or if it was, always when a kid starts middle school, parents say, I don't know how to get my kid to care about school. Suddenly their grades are terrible. They're not turning in assignments. They're disorganized. How do I make them care? And now it's that with online school. So everything has the pandemic twist on it.
Okay, and that one in particular, do you have an answer to that one? Because we get that question all the time. How do you motivate a kid who is so not motivated?
So you can't make a kid think or feel or believe something. You can kind of lead them a little bit gradually and subtly to the trough to drink. And again, I'll give Lisa DeMoore credit here for this one, but I think she wrote a really great article recently about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And right now it's really okay to offer rewards to kids. I mean, I've always felt like a middle schooler needs a lot of modeling and a lot of incentive anyway, because everything's new to them, right? But I think parents are sort of concerned right now, how will I develop that in my child? And it's really okay to, you can call it a bribe, you can call it a reward, you can call it whatever you want, but to get them to do something because they want to achieve whatever is of value to them in the moment, that's all right to use right now.
I also think like bribe is so negative. We use incentives everywhere in the world all the time. Like, why wouldn't we do it as parents and not feel badly like we're bribing our kid?
I think that's really smart. I know that I am someone who, in order to learn something, and I think most people are kind of this way, you need to repeat it over and over and over again. And that's boring and dull unless you have some reason to do it. So eventually, maybe, yes, it just becomes internal motivation, but that takes time and practice.
Okay, you have, first of all, I love acronyms. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the word you use to set up a whole other model for talking to our kids, and it is the brief model. Is that how you reference it? You call it that?
I call it brief, yep.
Okay, so can we break it down to what each letter stands for and then give us some examples of how it would be implemented?
Sure. So the idea behind brief is, first of all, keep it brief. I want your conversations to not be, they're never a lecture. A conversation isn't a lecture. I give scripts in the book, but it's not going to follow a script. Those are just kind of ideas of how you might broach things. So I want you to be thinking lots of short little conversations. And here's the way those can be structured using this model. So the B stands for begin peacefully. And the idea here is that because parents are freaked out about having these conversations, they treat it like, let me just jump into the deep end. I'll get past the hard part and I'll just say, okay, we have to talk about porn. Let's go. And that scares kids off. So you want to begin peacefully. And that just means like you might come at it sideways. Like you might just talk about something tangentially related to that. You might ask a question like, hey, what have you heard about this statistic? You might use the news or a TV show or some other way as an entry point. That's the B. The R is relate to your kid. So you hear a lot of parenting experts talk about the need to empathize with your kid, and it's true. But relating can be, yeah, when I was a teenager, we didn't have this issue. Or I understand that sounds like it's a really tough thing to try to navigate, or it's not your fault when something like this happens. So that's R. I is interview for data. And this is where I encourage parents to act like they are a district attorney who has no personal interest in the case. They're just gathering information. So you're going to use what parents have heard me talking about for years, the idea of having a Botox brow. And what that means is you're not getting all scrunched up and like you're really in their face. You're very neutral. You don't care. You're just asking some questions. So what do you know about this? What have you heard? What is your perception? That sort of thing. BRIE. E stands for echo. This is where you are playing the part of a therapist and you say, so what I'm hearing you saying is, or it sounds like, do you agree? Those sorts of questions. And then F, this is the moment every parent waits for. This is feedback. This is where you get to do what you wanted to do at the beginning. It's just jump in and say, hey, don't do X, Y, or Z. Thank you, goodbye. But you've earned your way to the F, to the feedback. So kids are really much more willing to listen at that point. And you're not just hitting them over the head and then walking out the room.
Okay, I want to say Shannon just wrote in the comments, neutral is my way of life in this season. Good for you.
Yes. Brilliant.
That's awesome. So can you give like a scenario and walk it through the whole brief process about how, and also, do you find that it just keeps moving along with each new scenario and it works?
Yes. So, I mean, I say yes, and sometimes you're talking to a kid who doesn't want to talk. So these conversations require two people to participate. Using this method really increases your opportunity and the chance that your child will participate with you. But it's no guarantee. You may have a kid who is very angry or upset or distracted, and then that's telling you this is not the time to have the conversation. So it's not foolproof that you can use this anytime, but it is your best, I think, your best shot. So you want to talk through a little example?
Yeah, give us a scenario.
So let's say you want to talk to your kid about vaping, for example. And then you might start begin peacefully. So you're not going to say, hey, are you vaping? Right. Hey, are all your friends vaping? So you begin with something like, oh, I watched a Facebook Live today, or I heard someone talking at work, or saw a news story about vape and how popular it is in middle school. Did you see that story? Are you hearing that yourself? So ask a question that sort of gets you in without accusing them so that they don't feel like, oh, you're judging right off the bat. Then you're going to relate. So you might say something like, oh, it sounds like the news is sort of blowing this out of proportion based on what you're saying, right? You're saying not as many kids are doing it. So that's good news to hear. And then I is where you get to ask your questions. You're interviewing. So you might say things like, do you ever see kids vaping at school? Or what is your understanding of what vape does to your lungs? So you can ask them some things. And then E is echo. So again, this is it sounds like what you're saying is some kids do it, but it's not that bad. Or it sounds like what you're saying is a lot of kids do it, but you have no interest. You're echoing back what you heard. And then F is feedback. And here you might say something like, so it seems like, this wasn't around when I was younger, but it's certainly around. Whether or not a lot of kids are doing it or a few kids, kind of hard to say. My feedback for you is that you are really good at taking care of yourself. You're very good at making decisions. And I would encourage you to do more research. Just know what this is all about. Google what it does to you. Be your own best sort of doctor here. Figure it out. And then if you have any questions about it, or you find that you've made a mistake and you want to talk, I'm here. And then you're done. And then you can hit it again later if you need to. But the feedback part, if you give them some sense of maturity and responsibility instead of just giving them a directive, they're far more likely to be thoughtful and to come back to you if they need you.
Wow, I think that is really excellent. All of it is just so excellent. And the thing I love that you started with is, for so long, we're being told to have conversations with our kids, but somewhere along the way, they're not willing. So it is nice to acknowledge that it's not just you that your kid won't talk to, but it is actually a real thing. And here's a formula. I love it. Jill wants to ask a question. So important to begin peacefully. So if we're mad at something they've done, do we need to wait until we come down?
I think that's really smart. Yes. You don't have to have these conversations immediately. You can take your time and have them when the time is right. So what you can do is put a placeholder on it. Anyone who's done dog training will know this trick, but you can notice what happened and then say, oh, you know what? That's something I'd love to talk with you about later. Maybe after dinner, we can sit down and talk about it. So you can mark the moment if you need to. You don't always need to, but you might want to, especially if it's sort of bad behavior towards you that you need to talk about. You can say, I don't really know how to react to this, but let's touch base on this later. So absolutely take a breath, calm down, you're not going to be able to begin peacefully if you're really raging mad.
Okay, here's another suggestion from Christina. I would also suggest helping your child know how to say no thanks without judgment to others and not looking cool.
Absolutely. In the vape example or any example that has to do with peer pressure, kids do better with practice. So if you can rehearse a few ways to say no, and sometimes the way is just, nah, I'm good. Like a really simple, short, that's it. But if they don't practice that a few times beforehand, they can get kind of their knees cut out from under them in the moment. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, Christina, that is great. Thank you. Okay, so I am so keenly aware of doing this to my children, saying things that makes them bristle, like they really are annoyed from the get-go. So it seems to me like you have come up with like the words that really push their buttons and then the words that really invite cooperation.
So I have these sprinkled throughout the book for each topic. There are specific ones on that particular conversation that I know are hot buttons, but I also open the book with just some general kind of do's and don'ts. And so the don'ts are things like don't use absolutes. And we forget, because we are desperate to make our point and to be heard, that even though that's a basic tip for communication that I think a lot of people know, we forget when talking to our kids not to say things like always and never. Well, you always leave your stuff on the stairs and you never take it up to your room. So that's why we're having this conversation again, right? They avoid absolutes, avoid being passive aggressive. And again, that's very obvious, but we forget when we are talking to our kids. I am very guilty of this one because I want my kids to appreciate all the hard work I do. And when I don't feel appreciated, my defense mechanism is to sort of victimize myself, and hoping that that will have them come back to me and say like, oh, we're so sorry. It never works. No one has an epiphany after someone makes a passive aggressive comment like, okay, well, that's fine. I just guess I won't make a nice dinner next time, right? No one ever says, oh, gee, you're right.
Okay, wait, but doesn't every person who has put in like Thanksgiving, I feel like
Yes.
Thanksgiving is the time where the person who's cooking shows up at the table pissed, right?
Right.
Okay, so what's the better way? I mean,
I would say save that for your friend or your partner. If you're trying to get your kid to have a realization, then the better way is, like Jill suggested, take a breath, calm down, and then in a nicer moment, you could say, I love Thanksgiving and it was hard for me that I felt like I put in all this work and I didn't get a lot of gratitude. So what can we do? What can we do? Because I want to cook a big meal and I want people to enjoy it. Let's think about this going forward. Can you and I tackle this problem together?
nice. Okay, so what would be, that's the cooperation way, and the passive aggressive way, not so recommended.
Not so recommended.
Although very satisfying, but not effective.
Yeah, and funny.
But not effective, right? Not so
Not
effective. So what did you have? I think you had maybe one more that you were going to share.
Let's see. I have a bunch in the book. Well, making it about you. So if you want to make the story, the topic, the theme about you and your experience, your kid is going to tune out because they are in a very developmentally appropriate, egocentric time of their lives. So if you can make it about them, you're going to do much better. They will tune into you. And so some of the things you can say that are on the do list really focus on them. And it's like, how can I support you? If you're having an issue, what do you need to be successful here? What can we do to bolster that? Or can we schedule a time to talk later? So rather than your kid feeling ambushed, you're really working with their schedule so that they don't feel like they're caught off guard. These are all things that work with their developmental phase.
The what can I do to help you is, in my family, it's been so disarming.
Yeah.
Because they've kind of shown up for a fight.
Right.
And you take the air out of that fight that they walked in with. So that one, I love that one. That's been a real valuable tool in my arsenal.
I love that.
Okay, so when they get the book, and tell us how they're going to get the book. Everyone's going to want it.
Oh, that's so nice. So you can get the book really anywhere. It's available on Amazon, at your independent booksellers, Barnes and Noble. If you follow me on social media, so I have a Michelle Icard author and speaker page. I also have Instagram under my name, Michelle Icard. You can, of course, I'm there talking about it all the time, so you can find it there.
And can you pre-order it now?
Yes, you
And I
absolutely
think
can.
there was something that came along with pre-ordering it.
So we have a couple sort of deals that we're offering right now. One is for schools. I'm doing a lot of Zoom talks for schools right now and waiving my fee for pre-orders. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about that. If you are a parent and you pre-order the book, we're going to be announcing in the next day or so a discount on a companion online course that goes with the book. So you as a parent read the book, and then maybe afterwards you'd still like a little help kind of launching into these conversations. And once a month, I'll send you a module that you and your child do together. It's like a short 20 to 30 minute, think BuzzFeed quiz kind of stuff, really fun activities that you and your kid can do together that will help crack open the door to better conversations. So there's that. And then finally, if you want a signed copy of the book, I'm having a virtual book launch. And again, you look on my Instagram or my Facebook, you will find it there. And you can come to that. It's going to be on Zoom, like everything. And I will sign a book for you there. You get into a little book signing line.
Oh, online. Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let's close with the question. What is the thing you hope parents take away from you, like the biggest takeaway from your book?
I hope that they realize no matter what habits or patterns they've developed to this point, this is the appropriate time to begin learning a new language. So it doesn't matter what came before. Everyone is starting at the same point right now. And you're all going to learn this new language together. So don't worry about what's happened before. Here we begin and go forward. It'll be much easier from here.
Michelle Icard, great talking to you. Really tremendous advice. I
Thank
really
you.
hope everybody gets your book because it's really valuable.
Thank you so much, Sue. I loved it. Great to see you.
You too. Thanks.